Around 1000 BCE, Babylonian astronomers pressed the name into wet clay, Girtab, which translates to the burning sting. That was the word carved into clay tablets for the constellation of Scorpio. It wasn't just a way of tracking a shape in the sky, it was a record of a specific type of person: patient, watchful, silent, until the moment was exactly right. They were not naming a star, they were describing a human being. Fast forward 3,000 years, someone you know just made a fake account to watch someone who blocked them. Different name, blank profile photo. They noted the new faces. They said nothing. They never planned to. The Babylonians knew them too. These descriptions are inscribed on a series of clay tablets held by the British Museum, compiled around 1000 BCE. They called it the Mulapin, the Plough Star Catalog. It is one of the earliest surviving attempts to systematically record what each constellation symbolized, written in clay, organized by star pattern, compiled across generations. When the text reaches Girtab, the Scorpion, the language shifts. The Scorpion is documented as a force, hidden power, patience before the strike, the ability to remain completely still while taking in everything around it, the sting held in reserve. The Babylonians were not describing an animal. Different civilizations with no direct contact attached remarkably similar themes to the same symbol. In Egyptian mythology, the scorpion goddess Serket was the deity of protection, hidden danger, and watchfulness. The Greeks and Romans carried forward the exact same cluster of qualities: vigilance, secrecy, loyalty, retaliation. Different symbols, different centuries. The same behavioral pattern. Ancient civilizations described the behavior. Modern psychology studies the mechanism. They are looking at the same human tendencies from opposite directions. Being close to this type of person in the early days feels like finally being seen. They don't just listen, they retain. They reference things said weeks ago like they just came up. The depth of focus is unlike anything most people have experienced. It feels like someone finally turned the lights on. But the looking happened before the first conversation ever went anywhere. The Scorpio already had the information: the previous job, the old neighborhood, the name that came up once in a casual story. They sit across the table and listen to the person tell them things they already knew. They ask the question that opens the room. They wait. They receive. They note the gap between what is shared and what is left out. That follow-up question is why people feel seen. It is also the moment the file was opened. You felt this, sitting across from someone who remembered something you barely remembered saying, and your stomach did something small and specific. That is not a coincidence. That is a Tuesday for a Scorpio. What looked like a connection was reconnaissance going perfectly. 6 months in, something shifts. The people close to a Scorpio start performing a version of themselves they did not audition for, pre-explaining things. I know this sounds weird, but before sentences that do not need a disclaimer. Names get swapped mid-story. Plans get simplified before they are mentioned. Nobody decides to do any of this. It just starts happening. The controlling atmosphere does not require demands. The paranoid surveillance does not require confrontation. It just requires presence. A coworker told the Scorpio that their partner's shirt looked good. 6 words. An offhand Tuesday compliment exchange. That evening, the Scorpio ran a full jealous reconstruction. Suspicion arriving before evidence. Looking for secrets in a sentence that contained none. The partner spent 2 hours defending an exchange they barely remembered. The next day, the partner went to work and stopped mentioning that coworker's name. Just stopped. Not because they were asked to, because they did not want to spend another 2 hours explaining themselves. You know that feeling, defending something so minor you can barely reconstruct it, while the other person recounts every detail. That feeling, stretched across 18 months. The watching has become control. The monitoring has become isolation. The possessive attention that once felt like devotion has become the walls. What gets left after it ends is harder to name. The first person took 2 years to figure out that something was wrong. The second took 8 months. The third never figured it out at all. That person just knew the warmth had been draining for a long time, and they could never find the leak. 3 people, different years, different cities. The last thing each of them said was a version of the same sentence. I never knew what I did wrong. The loyalty had felt real because it was real. The betrayal felt impossible because it arrived from the person who had known them best. The abandonment felt total because the Scorpio does not do partial exits. The trust had been complete. the wound left behind it was complete too. They observe a perceived shift in loyalty, detach internally, and wait with immense patience for the precise moment to withdraw completely. The scorpion does not announce the sting. Every person who eventually leaves is experienced as confirmation that watching closely was right all along, which means the next person gets watched more closely, which means the next person leaves for the same reason. That is the loop. From the inside, it does not look like a loop. It looks like evidence. But nobody ever asked where the watching started. There was a door, closed. Behind it, a tone, or a silence, or a mood with no name yet. A child pressing against it, learning something that would never fully leave. Not from instruction, from repetition. The breath before the word fine that meant it wasn't. The pause between the question and the answer was half a second longer than it should have. The way a room's temperature changed before anyone said a word. This was before school, before childhood had a language for any of it. The Scorpio learned early that what people show is rarely the whole story. The truth was always in the pause before the answer, not the answer. In 2011, a researcher named Stefan Porges found that the nervous system's threat scanning process calibrates early in unpredictable environments and keeps running for decades after those conditions are gone. In safe rooms, in good relationships, on ordinary evenings when nothing is wrong and nothing is coming. He did not call it damage. He called it adaptation, a survival wiring built precisely for the environment it came. From the environment disappeared. The wiring kept running. The Babylonians were not trying to explain why these people existed. They were simply describing them. The explanation would come much later. Thousands of years later, researchers would begin studying how early environments shape attention, vigilance, memory, and social awareness. The symbol came first. The mechanism came later. Gear tab, the burning sting. 3,000 years apart, the same human tendencies, observed from opposite directions. That is what it costs the Scorpio. Not the people it exhausts, what the watching takes from the Scorpio. A mind wired to scan for danger cannot also just be present. A quiet evening cannot just be a quiet evening. The Scorpio's psychology has already run 10 versions of what could go wrong before the evening arrives. The real version is always quieter than the ones they prepared for. The jealous monitoring and the devoted love are the same hunger. The obsessive loyalty and the paranoid surveillance come from the same wiring. And pulling one out pulls the other with it. The controlling watchfulness that keeps people close is the same behavior that leaves the Scorpio alone, unable to reach the intimacy they are guarding so carefully. The watching was built to protect. It does not know it became the thing that makes staying impossible. Gear tab, the burning sting, pressed into clay 3,000 years ago by people who had no psychology textbooks, no clinical language, no nervous system models. Just generations of watching the same human being appear, guarded, watchful, loyal, dangerous when crossed, and writing down what they saw. The fake account from the beginning of this video is still open. The Scorpio behind it is not doing anything that would surprise those ancient priests. They already wrote it down. The door from 30 years ago is somewhere behind all of this. A child learning to read the room before walking into it, checking the tone in a voice through a wall, getting very good at it. The wiring built in that hallway is still running. On a Tuesday evening, in a room where nothing is wrong, on a phone with a name that means nothing, and a profile photo nobody would recognize. The sting does not announce itself. It was always an attempt to feel safe.